Welcome into another video. Today we're going to be breaking down our second division for our NFL predictions, and that is the AFC West. The NFC West is already on my channel. If you're interested in that, go check that out now. But regarding the AFC West, for the first time since 2015, we saw a changing of the guard on top of the division. That was the Denver Broncos dethroning the Kansas City Chiefs after a long time coming. Now the Denver Broncos aim to defend their title, but the Chiefs did retool to try and come back for the top spot. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Chargers, who have not won the division since 2009, had a really good season and are getting a lot of players back healthy this year. A little tweak in the coaching staff. They're going to be right in the mix at the top of this division. And then you've got the Las Vegas Raiders, who are going through another new era, but this one does feel a little bit more different and a lot more exciting. Let's go ahead and get into my AFC West predictions. The first team I'm going to be breaking down today is the Las Vegas Raiders. Last year, the Raiders aimed to raise the bar and even out a spiraling franchise by bringing in legendary head coach Pete Carroll and attaching his quarterback from Seattle, Geno Smith, to him. It was an utter disaster. I think there's no short of saying it was a complete failure. But that being said, it was probably a blessing in disguise for this franchise. They found themselves with the number one overall pick where they were able to select Fernando Mendoza, bringing in one of the most sought-after offensive coordinators of the coaching cycle in Clint Kubiak. And now it feels like the tides are finally turning in Las Vegas for once. After 4 straight years of brand new head coaches, it feels like Kubiak is in lockstep with this franchise for quite some time. But it's still a young and fresh roster, so let's go ahead and dive into the roster outlook for the Las Vegas Raiders this year. They had a nice offseason, revamping their defense with linebacker additions of Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, drafting Traden Stukes, and then offensively bringing in Kirk Cousins to kind of be the mentor for the number one overall pick in Fernando Mendoza, bringing in the highest paid center now in football in Tyler Lindenbaum, and they didn't lose much. Geno Smith, Dylan Parham, a few players that are no longer in the plans for the Las Vegas Raiders. But for my 4 key players this year, you got Fernando Mendoza, Ashton Jeanty, Tyler Linderbaum, and Traden Stukes. Let's get into it. Now, with Fernando Mendoza, he's not even playing right now. So you might be thinking, why is he your 4 key player? He's going to be playing football at some point this season. Now, I like Kirk Cousins. I think that he can probably, he's got history with Kubiak. I think he can probably run this offense pretty well. That being said, though, he's way past his prime. They're going to probably be losing some games, and they're going to want to see Mendoza. And I think that he should be playing at some point this year. I'm a big believer in reps, and I think Mendoza needs some. With that being said, though, I'm a massive Mendoza fan. He was one of my favorite players in this class, by far my clear-cut quarterback number 1 and very deserving of that number 1 overall pick. I like the brain trust that he has in place with Kirk Cousins as the mentor. With Kubiak, I'm buying all the Mendoza stock that I possibly can. Sticking on the offensive side of the ball, though, these next 2 guys kind of go hand in hand with Ashton Jeanty and Tyler Linderbaum. Ashton Jeanty's unsuccessful, disappointing rookie season wasn't necessarily because of him. I put that more on the scheme of Chip Kelly, the interior offensive line just kind of deteriorating on him, not giving him what he should, and that is going to change. I think Clint Kubiak proved that he could establish a strong run game in Seattle, having the number 3 rushing attack this year in the NFL. On top of that, you bring in Tyler Linderbaum, who's my other key player, and he's one of the best interior offensive linemen, especially when it comes to run blocking. I think that him and Jeanty are going to go hand in hand, but Linderbaum also needs to be that calming leader presence for Fernando Mendoza once he steps into the game. The big thing between the quarterback and center relationship is communication. The center's helping spot things out, identifying mics with this and that. Linderbaum needs to be that guy, needs to be that leader for Fernando Mendoza over the course of the next few years. And on the defensive side of the ball, we're going to be talking about second-round pick Traden Stukes. This is a guy coming out of Arizona who's extremely versatile. He was one of my favorite players of this class. I love the selection for them. He's going to have to step up and make some plays this year. I know the expectations aren't too high with this team, but I think that this is a guy who could slide in on day 1, playing any role. I know he's already slotted to start at safety. and he's going to be a freak. This is a guy who's lined up all over the secondary. His instincts are that of a ball hawk. I mean, this guy is going to be getting some takeaways for this defense. I'm excited to see the career trajectory for Stooks in this defense. Now let's go ahead and get into my prediction for the Raiders, and that is 5-12. Just half a win below their Vegas line of 5.5. Wow. This is an exciting new era for the fan base. This team is still a ways away from winning. I do think their offensive line is still a few pieces away. Their defense has some really strong spots and some really weak spots. I expect it to be a little bit better, but not much. And on top of that, the division they're in is still damn good. They will probably be favored in none of those games, barring any major injuries. So I think it's probably best that this team gets themselves in a position for another top 10 pick. You're building a really strong core in place. It's okay to lose some games if you can see the core developing. We want to see good things from Brock Bowers. We want to see good things from Ashton Jeanty, Fernando Mendoza, Tyler Linderbaum on the defensive side of the ball. Jermod McCoy, who was a projected first-round pick, but dealing with injuries. Trayden Stukes. So these are things that we want to see out of these players. It's okay to win 5 games this year as long as you're building towards the future. And I think that in the next few years, we're going to be talking about the Raiders as a playoff team. But let's go ahead and move into my next team, and that is the Los Angeles Chargers. Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert had to navigate themselves through a very injury-riddled 2025 and still somehow found themselves in the playoffs last season. Now they're getting both their tackles back fully healthy and have been able to spend more of their resources to bolster up that position group. With new offensive coordinator Mike McDaniels now in place, there's expectations on this offense to hit a ceiling that it has not hit in quite some time. Defensively, they're going to be trying to figure some things out after the loss of very, very smart defensive coordinator Jesse Minter as he makes his way to the Baltimore Ravens. He was kind of the mastermind behind that defense, but it's still a pretty solid roster who has big expectations as well. Let's go ahead and get into the roster outlook for the Los Angeles Chargers in 2026. They really didn't lose many big names, only Keenan Allen, who was a significant offensive piece for them, and Adolfo Owe, who they traded for halfway through the season. But they brought in Charlie Kolar, David Njoku. Those are going to be some big pieces on this offense, adding Cole Strange as well, Dalvin Tomlinson to the defensive line, and then adding Akeem Mesidor and Jake Slaughter through the draft, both of which are in my 4 key players alongside Omarion Hampton and Joe Alt. Getting into my 4 key players, we're going to kick it off with Omarion Hampton, who I expect to just have an absolute beast of a year. Not only are you getting your 2 offensive tackles back, but you did improve the interior offensive line as well. You have a new offensive coordinator in Mike McDaniels in place who has a pretty good track record as a play caller and establishing the run in the offenses that he's been a part of. They got a good group of tight ends in place with Njoku, Kolar, and Gadsden. I expect to see a bunch of jumbo packages in place, and I expect Omarion Hampton to absolutely feast this year. My next key player, though, is offensive lineman Joe Alt, the phenomenal rookie season in 2024, but he just got kind of thrown to the wolves last year. Moved over to left tackle, battled a season-ending injury. They need a big year out of their top 5 pick in the 2024 NFL draft. He's on pace to be one of the stars at his position, but we really need to see it in year 3, and he's got to stay healthy. Next up, another offensive lineman, and that's Jake Slaughter. He was my number 1 center of the draft class, and he had different plans ahead of him this offseason. He was slated to start at guard for this team until Tyler Biadasz, their free agent center signing, went down with an ACL injury. Now Slaughter gets a lot more pressure put on him, and he is the center for this offense now moving forward. He's going to have to really step up in a big role this year and perform right away as a rookie. I think it would have been a lot easier for him being in between Biadasz and Slater. Now he's the forefront of that interior offensive lineman, and he's got to have a really big year. And then my last key player on the defensive side of the ball, that is Akeem Mesidor, their first-round pick edge rusher. He was one of the more pro-ready players coming out of this year's draft class. He's a seasoned college vet, had been there quite some time, but it's a big year for him. He really does need to show that he can play right away and not be this project piece. Tuli Tuipulotu and Khalil Mack are both on contract years. I would expect them to get a contract extension done with Tuli, but Mesidor is going to have to take one of their roles next year and fill in nicely. So it's a big year for him. I expect him to still be involved heavily in this year's game plan, but he really needs to prove that he can be a long-term piece for this team. Let's go ahead and get into my prediction for this team, and that is 10-7 this year for the Los Angeles Chargers. I expect things to kind of even out for this franchise in 2026. I expect their offense to really bolster up. They got their tackles back. They invested other resources into the offensive line. I think Lad McConkey, Mari and Hampton are real-time playmakers. I'm a big fan of Gadsden, Kolar, and Njoku. I love what they're building with McDaniels in place at the OC. I expect their offense to really be humming this year, but I do expect them to probably take a step back slightly defensively just because Jesse Minter and what he did for that defense, it was phenomenal. I don't know if I have full faith in Chris O'Leary to be able to step in and do what Minter did. That being said, though, the defensive side of the ball is still a very strong roster, and I expect them to be that borderline top 10 defense. I mean, it's a step down from a top 3 unit, but I expect them to be that borderline top 10 defense, and I expect the Chargers to be a playoff team this year. Let's go ahead and move into my next team, and that is the Denver Broncos. The Broncos had an amazing season last year. Won the division, AFC Championship game appearances, winning at any cost possible. And they likely would have been playing in the Super Bowl had Bo Nix not broken his ankle in the divisional round. Now, Denver looks to double back this year, getting some new offensive playmakers in place and keeping their dominant defense mostly intact. That being said, though, the division around them got significantly better across all 3 teams. So the task isn't going to be easy for this team in 2026. Let's take a look at the roster outlook for the Denver Broncos this year. It really was a quiet offseason outside of the Jalen Waddle trade. They didn't do much, and then they did lose a big piece in their defense of John Franklin Myers. Dre Greenlaw as well went back to San Francisco, but they mostly kept the defense intact other than that big John Franklin Myers loss. Looking at my 4 key players for the Denver Broncos this year, you got Jalen Waddle, rookie Jonah Coleman, and Tyler Onyedum, and then second-year defensive back in Jahdae Barron. Kicking it off with Jalen Waddle, this was the Broncos' big splash of the offseason, sending pick 30 to the Miami Dolphins for the star wide receiver. But that being said, it's been a few years since we've really seen Jalen Waddle perform at his peak. It's been 2 seasons since we've seen him have 1,000 yards receiving. So there's big expectations in Denver for him to come in and be the final piece to their offensive puzzle. So he needs to do that this year, and I expect him, if he can stay healthy, I expect him to do that. That being said, let's move to the running back room. Jonah Coleman, I'm a big fan of this player. I'm not the biggest fans of R.J. Harvey or J.K. Dobbins, who just can't seem to stay healthy. I think Jonah Coleman can come in and have a real impact in this offense. This is a guy who is a very versatile player. Pass catching, pass pro, both very strong aspects of his game, as well as a runner, really good vision, really stocky build. I think he's going to fit well into this offense. I'm sure all 3 of these backs are going to get their workload, but it's an open room in my opinion. If Jonah Coleman comes in and plays the best ball, there's no doubt in my mind Sean Payton's going to roll with him. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, though, we got Tyler Onyedum as one of my 4 key players to watch, and this was one of my most slept-on players of the draft class. The Broncos used their first draft pick in the 3rd round on Onyedum, and listen, John Franklin Myers had 7.5 sacks for them last year. This defensive line is perfectly fine. Still got Benito, Cooper, Allen. But I expect Tyler Onyedum's role to grow significantly throughout the year. He's got really scary traits, and he could be an elite pass disruptor from the interior defensive line and kind of be that immediate replacement for John Franklin Myers. I expect his role to grow throughout the course of the season. And then my last key player is Jahdae Barron. Last year's first-round pick for the Denver Broncos still kind of has no plan in place. This was a very talented player coming out of Texas, and he's struggling to find a name for himself on this defense. I understand patience and I understand taking your time, but you need to see some impact out of this player this year. Otherwise, some alarms are going to start going off. I like the Denver Broncos' current DBs, but that being said, I don't think that they can't be replaced by your first-round pick in last year's draft class, which was likely the expectation. If he hasn't taken that jump in year 2, then should be some concerns. So I think it's a big year for Jahdae Barron. We need to kind of start to see something out of this player. Otherwise, some alarms are going to be going off on the 2025 first round pick. Let's go ahead and get into the prediction for the Denver Broncos this year, though, and I have them at 10-7. I really could just take the easy way out here and be like, oh my God, the Denver Broncos are a classic case of regression because of their 11 one-score wins, which is tied for the most in NFL history. And I know that a lot of people are saying that. But I also, and there's some truth to that. I do think there is some truth to that. They're not going to be able to replicate that success from last year in them one-score games. You know, it's hard to overcome. There's a few teams in the NFL, including my Chicago Bears, who are going to have to overcome some things. But I also think you got to take the division into play here. They had a 5-1 division record last year. I think the division around them got better, and I expect that 5-1 record to kind of come back down to the median right now. And so, yeah, I think this is still a very good roster and a team that very well could be battling to come out of the AFC come late January. Like, this is a good team with a stout defense and an offensive genius and Sean Payton that can make this offense work. I fully believe that they're going to be a playoff team. They're going to be a scary team to watch. I just do expect some slight regression because of the 11 wins with one score. Yes, I know that's classic, but I just think that the talent around them in their division also got significantly better, and I expect that division record to fall a little bit as well. That being said, though, Broncos still a damn good squad. Let's go ahead and move into my final team to talk about in the AFC West, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs were one of 2025's biggest disappointments. The golden franchise of this decade had one of its worst seasons in some time, also losing their last 6 games of the season and their future Hall of Fame quarterback to a torn ACL. It was just a scary season for the Kansas City Chiefs. But with that being said, now they changed some coaching staff around. They retooled their roster, really went all in on the draft, and now they're looking to get back on top as the kings of the West. There's a lot at stake right now in Kansas City, and there's a lot of players who need to mesh to really make this happen. Let's go ahead and take a look at the roster outlook for the Chiefs this year. Their big splash of the offseason was bringing in Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker, but also retooling their defense with guys like Kyrus Tonga, Alani Gilman, and then big first-round rookies in Mansour Delane and Peter Woods. But they did lose some significant secondary pieces. They traded away Trent McDuffie, one of the best nickelbacks in the game. They also lost Jalen Watson to the Los Angeles Rams, as well as Brian Cook to the Cincinnati Bengals. My 4 key players this year for the Kansas City Chiefs are Patrick Mahomes, Josh Simmons, Peter Woods, and Mansour Delane, kicking it off with the future Hall of Famer himself, Patrick Mahomes. And this is his biggest test yet. A 6-11 record last year for your franchise. You're coming off a massive knee injury. People are starting to have doubts creep in about your play. You have so much to prove this year, Mahomes. Your roster is no longer good enough to help just cruise you into the playoffs, where then you could ball out. The pressure is really on for him this year in 2026, but I think pressure makes diamonds. We're talking about one of the greatest of all time here. I think he's going to have a phenomenal 2026 year. I think he's going to ball. Next up, we got Josh Simmons. Josh Simmons at 32 last year truly was like my steal of the draft. I thought he was a top 10 talent. And then last year in his rookie season, when he was on the field, we saw some truly elite flashes from the left tackle. The issue was he wasn't on the field all that much. It's not as much as the Chiefs were hoping him to be. I know that the media kind of questioned his toughness, questioned his love for the game of football. There were some murky things about his situation last year. All of that's behind. Josh Simmons, I know he has a little tweak in his back injury right now, but when he's fully healthy, I think that the Chiefs know they have their cornerstone left tackle in place. I love this player. I think he's going to have a big year once he gets fully healed from this little slight tweak of a back injury that he's going through right now in camp. But he's already looked super strong in preseason. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, we've got rookies Peter Woods and Mansour Delane, my number 1 defensive tackle and my number 1 cornerback. I love the Kansas City Chiefs draft. Starting with Peter Woods. The ceiling is through the roof on this player. He has elite traits in both the run game and the passing game. I think that this guy could be a true bull rushing disruptor. He's extremely athletic, extremely strong. I think he's going to be an elite player. They're not going to be able to do that when you've got Chris Jones and George Karlaftis in place. I know that they got Kyrus Tonga slated in as the starter right now, but watch Peter Woods slowly but surely over the course of this year make an impact on this roster. I think he's going to be a superstar in the making. You can see the explosion emoji that I have. I think this is going to be an explosive player and really shock some people. And then you have Mansour Delane, who's now the headliner of this secondary. They made it clear that they wanted this player. They moved up and they draft this player. I think he's an extremely sticky coverage man. I think he's going to be an immediate impact player in this secondary that is relying on him. He needs to have a big season. He's their cornerback one right now. Like, he needs to be an immediate impact player. I know it's a lot of pressure for a rookie, especially a cornerback, such a tough position to play, but they moved up. They drafted you number 6 overall. They wanted you. They let Jalen Watson walk. They traded McDuffie to the Rams. Brian Cook is gone. You're now the face of this secondary, and he's got to ball this year. Let's go ahead and get to my prediction for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm sure that I'm going to get a lot of comments or at least some eye rolls about this one, but I got the Chiefs winning the division at 11-6 this year. That's a half a win above their Vegas line, and I think this may truly be a ballsy pick. But that being said, the Chiefs had a very solid offseason in my eyes. I loved their offseason as a whole. First off, you go kind of set the tone, bringing in Eric Bieniemy, bringing him back. And Bieniemy was with my Chicago Bears this year. I know that this is a hard-nosed, tone-setting mother effer. Like, he is going to come in and really kind of bring this violence back to the Chiefs offense and help out a lot, I think. And then you go out there and you sign Ken Walker. I'm so excited about the Chiefs' run game. I think some people are probably overhyping the Chiefs' run game. I don't think Ken Walker is this like elite talent, but I think this is the best system they've had in place in quite some time. I think they're going to do a really dominant job at running the football this year, and I think that's just going to unlock everything for Patrick Mahomes. I expect him to fully come back into MVP form. The older he gets, the wiser he gets. I expect him to have a phenomenal season. Now, 11-6 isn't some sexy record. I still think that this roster has its limitations, what they can do probably on both sides of the ball. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, I enjoyed their offseason as well. I love how they have retooled this defensive line. They already had Chris Jones and George Karlaftis and place 2 players I'm fond of. They bring in Kyrus Tonga, a big, beef-eating big boy. I know they're excited about Ashton Gillette on the other side of George Karlaftis, and I really loved R. Mason Thomas, and then, like I said, Peter Woods. R. Mason Thomas, pass rush specialist out of Oklahoma. I think he's going to bring some juice to that defensive line, and I think Peter Woods, by the time this year is over, he's going to be really playing damn good football for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Spagnuolo is a genius. It's going to be just fine. I don't think this is going to be a top 5 unit or anything, but I think it's going to be a top 15 unit with a damn good offense attached to it. That's why I got the Chiefs winning the division this year. And there you have it. There is my AFC West predictions. Comment down below what you think and how I did. Make sure to like and subscribe, all that good shit. Thanks for tuning in to our video. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.